As Georgia embarks on its second recount, the people the process is meant to reassure still don't feel totally assured, and we'll hear why. And 2 counties in Oregon voted on November 3rd to discuss seceding from the state and joining Idaho. The head of the Move Oregon's border movement will tell us what all that's about. So on Saturday night, the Trump campaign requested a second recount in Georgia. That's after a first audit and hand recount led to the state certifying Joe Biden as the winner with a margin of just 12,500 votes, or about 0.25%. Given the closeness of the results, the president is entitled to ask for a machine recount. Georgia's Secretary of State said that the people of Georgia shouldn't have any doubts remaining now about who won the election. But for many involved in the initial process and that first recount, they do have doubts. Here to share those with us are Brad Carver. He's the Republican Party chairman of the 11th Congressional District, Jason Shepard, chair of the Cobb County Republican Party, and Suzi Voyles, who's a poll manager in Fulton County. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Cindy.
Brad, maybe I'll start with you. Do you feel that this second recount that is going to start will provide any different results or provide any more clarity than the first recount?
Well, this is going to be a machine recount. And so, the first process we went through was actually an audit, and that was a hand audit. And the race that was picked was the presidential race. That's what the Secretary of State selected. And that, did a good job, I think, of confirming the results from the machines. So in a large extent, I think that the numbers are going to track along what we've seen with the original results as well as the recount. Our greater concern, though, is still on signature verification issues surrounding absentee ballots. That's certainly been a concern, and as it stands right now, those will not be done in this recount. The Secretary of State had a press conference this afternoon and has listed that they do have the ability to audit the signature verifications, not to match ballots with the actual absentee ballot request, but it can be done in terms of looking at the signatures on the absentee ballots as well as the absentee ballot request. And we think that's we the state party of Georgia have requested unanimously of our executive committee that indeed they do look in to verify the signatures on the absentee ballot request as well as the ballots themselves. So we think that would be a good process to go through to give us a little bit more clarity on the absentee ballot verification process.
So is the Secretary of State giving a reason why they're not doing that as part of the process?
Well, it's a constitutional reason because, again, people are entitled to have a secret ballot. And so in order to match them, well, first of all, the ballots have been separated from the requests. And so therefore, it's hard to go back and trace that. But the second reason, of course, is that people are entitled to a secret ballot. But a audit can be done, which would not lead to matching the ballots, but just to see if it was properly, if the request was properly done. And we think that would be important to verify how the process worked.
Properly done, meaning you think there might be people who aren't eligible voters that were requesting them, and that would reveal that. Is that what you mean by properly done?
Well, that's right. I mean, we certainly have uncovered evidence of people that are dead voting. And the reason that can happen is because someone else requests the ballot other than the valid voter. And so that's certainly something that needs to be looked into.
Okay. And Jason, we've chatted before about a few of these topics, but something just recently happened with some shredding down at the elections office. What was that about? What happened?
Yes, and on Friday in Cobb County, Janine Evler, our director of elections and registration, hired a shredding company to start shredding some of what she considered the ancillary documents that were not necessarily part of the audit or the upcoming recount. And she was telling us that it was things like handwritten Post-it notes, it was instructions, and other things. Luckily, we were tipped off this was happening, and myself and another Republican attorney, Robert Barker, who headed down to Jim Miller Park where this was going on, was able to stop it that day. Talking to the director, Janine Evler, we reminded her that all these pieces of paper, whether she thinks it's evidence or not, could potentially be evidence in any case dealing with the election. So under state law, knowing that litigation is potentially pending, it was her duty to basically secure and store all this information. Her claim on it was she didn't see any of this as being possible evidence. One of my legal specialties, I spent 5 years in working in discovery, which means when a company was subpoenaed and the other party asked for a bunch of corporate records, our team of attorneys would go through those corporate records and decide what was evidence in this case and what was not evidence in the case. And obviously toss out everything that was not pertinent, but keep for the case everything that was. Basically, by destroying what could be potential evidence, this may have set back any kind of litigation that the president or any other party for that matter in an election dispute may want to look through and find evidence. One of the things that were definitely destroyed, at least in a small part, was the blank inner envelope that an absentee ballot was put in. As Brad Carver was talking about, we had to separate the ballot from the outer envelope with the signature, so the voters would have that constitutional right to a secret ballot. And the way that is done is the voters would put their actual ballot into a plain white envelope, which would then be put into the outer envelope, which is the one they signed. Once the signature was verified, the inner envelope was taken out, taken to another room, put in with a bunch of other plain white envelopes, and then the ballots were open. So no ballot could be tracked back to that original envelope it came in. There's been some concern and some eyewitness reports that our monitors have seen absentee ballots with no folds, no creases, and look like they were never folded. So what we would like to do is be able to match those inner envelopes as well as the outer envelopes with a certain number of ballots, not the actual ballot itself, but if there's 500 absentee ballots, there should be 500 plain white envelopes and 500 envelopes that were signed. Now we may have far fewer than that with those envelopes being shredded.
I see. Very interesting. So I think Suzi might have seen some of the things that you were just mentioning. So Suzi, why don't you tell us what you saw on the election as a poll manager and then after during the recount that concerned you?
Excuse me, I'm sorry. I'd be happy to. I've been a poll manager for over 20 years, and there are certain definite procedures that remain consistent. And one of those is the chain of custody. I went in on Sunday to sign for everything I was to pick up, found out our machinery wasn't ready, our poll pads weren't ready, and I was asked yet to sign the chain of custody. And I said, "You're not giving me anything on this letter." And he said, "Well, if you don't sign, you cannot work." So I went ahead and I signed, and above my signature I wrote, "I have not received anything that is listed here on this paper." So then I went in on Monday with my crew, because we typically set up on Monday, and we had no machines, no poll pads, nothing. So I
Sorry,
called
can
to
you
see
just
when
specify what kind of machines did you
Sure.
not have?
The poll pads are like an electronic numbered list of voters, and it's like an iPad in a case. But then the machines themselves, the ballot marking device, is in our county. It's in a huge cabinet, and nothing was there. We had nothing. We didn't even have signs to put up as to vote here, anything like that. Nothing had arrived. So they promised us it would be there by 6. Well, 6 came and went. At least I did get my poll pads. I met our director at an area high school to pick those up, along with probably a half a dozen other people from other individual polls. And then he said, "Oh, your machines will be there by 9. So I'm reporting to this poor janitor, and he says, "I'll stay as long as it takes." Well, my machines got there around 1:30 in the morning. And so when we showed up at 5 o'clock, 5 a.m. on election day, we went to take care of everything. Nothing was secure. I was a little bit frustrated and kind of aghast. Our training tells us if the seals on the machines that lock either the doors or the memory card or the scanner or even the big metal cabinets themselves are either missing or not what's recorded, then we can't use those machines because we don't know if somebody has tampered with those during the course of the weekend, the day before, whatever. So I put some of my machines aside, and at least we had 4 what we call BMDs, ballot marking devices, that we could use. We started on our poll pads, and unfortunately, even though the tags were right on our poll pads, they were programmed. See, we can't open any of these things prior to the start of the election day. So there was no way that we could know. We had to go by the visible tags that were there. When I opened these up, it was immediately denoting everybody as an absentee voter or out of district in the wrong precinct. I looked carefully, and we had 2 poll pads out of 3 that were programmed for the wrong poll. They were programmed for someplace on Campbellton Road, which is quite a ways south of us. Fortunately, the Dominion people came quickly, but through use of the internet, they were able to reprogram the 2 that were incorrectly programmed, and we were able to create voter access cards so people could vote on the machines. The process didn't take long, but it just was not as clean, it was not as secure, and it wasn't as logistically safe as that which I'm accustomed to.
Before we get to what happened in the recount, let me just ask you, you said they were connected to the internet, and we've heard, are those poll pads normally connected to the internet? Is that a normal thing for them? Is that expected?
No, it's not expected. And what you've got to remember, this is a whole new system for us. This is the first major election in which Fulton County has used these. Before, our express polls that we used, it was a closed system, so anything that we needed done on those machines, we had to call. And typically, if we could resolve the status of the voter, we could not always let them vote on the machines. And these were the old machines. We typically had to allow them to vote provisional and just assure them that because everything was in order, their vote would most likely count all the way down ballot.
All right, let me jump to what you saw at the recount, because Jason earlier mentioned, that there were some ballots that looked, like they hadn't been folded yet, they were absentee ballots. Can you tell us what you saw?
I certainly can. I'm going to truncate this a little bit. We were to be there at 7, but we did not receive our first box until 9:45 that Saturday morning. We worked in teams of 2 so that each of us could verify what the other one was seeing and make sure that everything was as it should be. We were given a corrugated box that was assembled with clear packing tape and taped together that way. And the seal that is typically on a lot of things, it's a sticker type seal, was kind of slapped on, but it wasn't secure. But the thing that caught my eye was nobody had signed that seal. So once again, there was something that was amiss with the chain of custody. That should have been signed. We had our box opened up, and we went, and inside our box were about 800 absentee ballots, or absentee style ballots. These ballots were bound in batches of 100, except one batch was 110. And that was the batch that was very unusual to me. This batch, after we'd gone through and we'd seen usage, and by this time many hands have been on this. I mean, people have opened these ballots. Well, first people have opened them at home. They have used them. They have folded them up, put them back in, and there was obvious wear on them, obvious use. Edges were slightly curled. We came up to this one particular batch, though, and as soon as I took the rubber band off and the paper that had the original count on it, I talked to my teammate and I said, feel these. There was a marked difference in appearance. They were stark white. I called them pristine because they were so clean. You could see where the fold was to be, but these had never been folded. There was no way these ballots had ever been folded, and particularly folded in an inner envelope, in an outer envelope, and either put through the mail or put into these big boxes. These were flat, and they were very precisely filled out. In fact, they were so precisely filled out, they were all filled out exactly the same, except for 2 votes. There were 2 Trump votes, but all the rest were for Joseph R. Biden. And the oval was what attracted our attention the first time, because this oval was pretty well bubbled in, but it had a slight eclipse of white inside the bubble. And that wouldn't have been too unusual, except when that was repeated well over 100 times. It really was alarming to us.
Wow.
These were identical ballots.
That sounds unusual. So you've written an affidavit with all of this. You've submitted an
Yes,
affidavit,
ma'am.
right? Okay.
I did.
Unfortunately, we have to wrap up here. We've run out of time. There's still lots to discuss on Georgia, so maybe we'll have you back. Thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night. And coming up after the break, why are counties in Oregon thinking of joining Idaho? But first, here's America Q&A.
If everyone was nice and just treated everybody with respect, that would go so far. We don't need to be so angry at everybody. What's the point? I live each day like it's my last day. I want to be happy. I want to be happy. And I think everybody and most of the people I come in contact with want to be happy too.
Learn more about the country's history and, give credit where it's due. America, like any other country, has its problems, but we are, I believe, the greatest country in the world.
Oh, that's a good question. It's kind of hard to unite America right now. We're pretty divided.
Stop attacking one another.
Definitely call for peace for all people.
Stop thinking about politics and treat people the way you want to be treated.
I think that we need to have fair and honest elections, and it needs to get to the bottom of the fact that a lot of cheating has gone on and theft between the computer systems and the mail-in ballots. I think it has been very unfairly done, and the mainstream media is not reporting it. They're hiding it under the rug.
In December of 2019, Mike McCarter, a retiree in La Pine, Oregon, launched a movement to see if rural communities in Oregon and Northern California thought they might be better off joining Idaho. The proposal was on the ballot in 4 Oregon counties in the recent election, and 2 of them voted to discuss it. So what's it all about? Mike McCarter is here to tell us. Mike, welcome.
Well, thank you very much for allowing me to come on tonight.
So this is a very interesting movement that you started here. Can you tell us what's it all about? Why do you think the rural counties in Oregon would be better off in Idaho?
Well, this has gone on for many years. It's nothing new, but it's a new message, a new way to solve the issue where we're not being represented in the Oregon legislature at all, and they're just going on with their agenda by taxing, spending, and not giving us a voice whatsoever. So people are pretty frustrated in rural Oregon about the way they're being treated and the way this state is moving forward.
So it was on the ballot in 4 counties. How many counties altogether are you in conversation with about this?
Right now we have the 4 counties that got on the November ballot, and we have 12 more that we have petitions going in. And we've got 3 counties that refuse to accept our petition request, and we're working with them to try to get it to go there too.
And so why do you think that Idaho is a better deal for your counties?
Well, you stop and look at the facts. Idaho ranks 3rd in regulatory freedom. Oregon ranks 43rd. Oregon taxes, spends. Idaho's the 8th smallest tax burden on people. Oregon's the 33rd smallest tax burden on people. People who move to Oregon or move to Idaho actually take and save $1,722 a year on taxes. Not to mention the cost of living is less in Idaho. So all in all, their conservative values line up extremely well with rural Oregon. And we're just, pretty frustrated with the way that Oregon is handling things in the Willamette Valley and especially in the Portland area.
For example, what things in particular frustrate you?
Well, you look at the way Portland's being destroyed. You look at the new drug laws that have just been passed. You look at the way that Oregon manages its forests. On and on down the line, the leadership in Oregon is basically just concerned about urban Oregon, which is around the Portland metro area, and they're not concerned with what we're dealing with.
And so, is Idaho interested in having these counties join?
We're opening negotiations with Idaho, with their representatives, with their legislators. We're talking to the people. Our movement is not a movement to change anything in Idaho. The only thing it would change in Idaho is to make it bigger. We want to come alongside their conservative folks, add our conservative people, and maintain a voice for conservative values.
So how much actually would be the total population that would be added to Idaho if all the counties voted to join?
We're adding 1.2 million people, so it's about 71%, and it would increase their population to 2.9 million people.
So that would change congressional representation as well then?
Well, basically it's not adding any more U.S. representatives or any more U.S. senators at all. It's just making a shift by adjusting the border. So yes, it would change the representative and the Senate makeup in the state of Idaho, but it would just add what we have here moving over to them.
I see, right. So is there a downside to this? What are the downsides that people are concerned about if they're not, accepting to have it on the ballot or discuss it?
Well, we're just at the beginning of the process. No county can legally succeed from the state of Oregon. It has to be done through the legislature. The downside to it would be that it's going to take some time. It's not something that can happen immediately. This is one county at a time that we're working with to get that vote to see what the county wants to do in the Oregon legislature. Once they start working on it, they need to negotiate with Idaho, and then Oregon and Idaho take it to the U.S. Congress for approval.
I see. And is the Oregon legislature interested in this?
We've contacted some of the representatives and the state senators. We've gotten some good response from it. But, during the election that has just taken place, a lot of the representatives and senators aren't necessarily stepping out there and adding their voice to something new like this. So we're going to be working with it to talk to them, to get it into the legislature, and to see what their response is like.
Is there a precedent for this?
No, not really. I mean, it goes all the way back to 1860s with Virginia and West Virginia when there was a big shift there, right around the Civil War. Now, Oregon and Washington have adjusted their borders, 1958, I believe, along the Columbia River because of the way the channel moved. But as far as any recent changes between states, there's not a lot of history on it right now.
So I'm sure people ask you, why don't you just move to Idaho if you think it's so much better? What's your answer to that?
Well, that's a good question. We love where we live. We love the Oregon land. We love a lot of the people in rural Oregon are second, third, fourth generation property owners. I'm third generation Oregonian. I love Oregon, but constantly banging your head against the wall trying to get a change in the legislature and to get a more balanced legislature where we can take in and express our views, because when they pass a bill to deal with urban Oregon, it affects all of us in rural Oregon too.
And so do you feel pretty assured that Idaho won't start shifting left if that's the main concern?
Well, I mean, there's always that possibility in every state, but there seems to be a large group of conservative people in Idaho, along with a large group of conservative people in rural Oregon, coming together and supporting maintaining those conservative values. This is not just taking place regionally in Oregon. It's happening in other states, between Illinois and Indiana. There's some talk in New York. There's some talk in the Virginias. This is an issue that's going to have to be dealt with, and we feel that we've come up with a solution to it, to adjust the border and to allow us to be governed by Idaho versus Oregon.
So we have to wrap up, but just finish by telling us, what are the next steps? What happens now?
Well, we just keep working at it. We've got, like I say, 12 counties that we're working to get the petitions in. We're working with the Oregon legislature, working with the Idaho legislature, working with the people from Idaho, so they understand that we're not trying to take them over. We're not trying to change anything with them. We just want to come alongside them and fight for conservative values.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Okay, thank you. And please, people, contact us on www.greateridaho.org if you can.
And keep us posted.